Oh boy. Oh boy. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a doozy here. We got a doozy, ladies and gentlemen. But before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, we gotta go ahead and spread the news out some. We gotta spread the news out some. We gotta spread it out and make sure that people can see us, man. Because right now we are gonna be going live soon. We're going live, ladies and gentlemen. And when we go live, it's gonna be wild. When we go live, ladies and gentlemen, it's gonna be wild. We're gonna review what the DOJ has said about Minneapolis police. We're gonna expose what the DOJ has said about Minneapolis police, and it's gonna be wild. It's going to be wild. So, folks, if you don't know what's happening, the DOJ has placed the Minneapolis Police Department, the same police department involved with George Floyd, under a federal consent decree. Do you understand what that essentially means? You know, the long and the short of it is, a federal consent decree means that the federal government thinks they can do a better job at running something than you. That should be all you need to hear to understand just how bad Minneapolis police truly are. When the federal government thinks they can do a better job at running something than you, that's how you know you fundamentally failed as an organization. When the federal government thinks they are less corrupt than you, that's how you know. That's how you know you have failed. When the federal government thinks they're better at running anything versus you. When they say that you're too brutal as they're currently drone striking people. That's bad, y'all. Y'all, so with that being said, we're going to get into this. We're going to take some breaks throughout this, but we're going to get to this. And we're going to make this into some separate videos because this is wild, y'all. What you're about to hear is going to be out of this world. Some of the stuff the DOJ has found. Some of the stuff the DOJ has found is out of this world. I want to see this on YouTube. Because I know it's in my history. I just listened to it. And I want you guys to hear this. This is some wild stuff that's happening. All right, y'all. So this right here is the DOJ talking about what happened with Minneapolis police. And they're talking about how bad they were. Same police department involved with George Floyd. Right? Same police department involved with George Floyd. Some of the stuff you're about to hear is absolutely insane. Some of the stuff you're about to hear is absolutely insane. So insane that I'm going to make it into separate videos because why not? Why not? A federal consent decree, essentially, and especially without me having to Google it, a federal consent decree is when the federal government pretty much forces an agreement between a city and its police department to force them to follow patterns and practices that are actually healthy and follows the Constitution. You'd only be placed under this when the DOJ does a pattern or practice investigation to see if you're violating the Constitution, if you're being racist, if you're being sexist, if you're being homophobic, if you're being whatever. And they will intervene in a way that basically says what I said towards the beginning of the broadcast. Essentially, they're telling you as a police department, you are so corrupt that we think we can do a better job. That's bad. That's bad. So let's get into this. It's Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. Press conference.
Good morning, everyone. Here with me today are Associate Attorney General Vanita Gupta, Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights Kristen Clark, and First Assistant United States Attorney Ann Billson. I also want to acknowledge Mayor Jacob Fry, Council President Andrea Jenkins, Community Safety Commissioner Cedric Alexander, and Police Chief Brian O'Hara. Thank you all for joining us today. On May 25th, 2020, George Floyd was killed at the hands of a law enforcement officer who was sworn to protect him. As Mr. Floyd died, other officers failed to intervene. The Justice Department has since convicted 4 former Minneapolis police officers for their roles in the death of George Floyd.
Did y'all hear that? So basically, what Merrick Garland just said was that they've already convicted 4 Minneapolis police officers in connection to what happened to George Floyd. Already convicted 4 of them. All right. So for all the people out there defending these police officers or besmirching the memory of George Floyd or attacking this man or saying all kind of negative things about him or his family, you're defending criminals who were arrested, tried, and convicted in the court of law, all 4 of them, of these heinous crimes against an innocent man. Because when you are being arrested, you are being charged, when you're being placed in handcuffs, you are assumed guilty. You are assumed innocent until proven guilty. In the case of the police, they assume that you are guilty. But in the case of a citizen, any citizen, doesn't matter who you are innocent until proven guilty. So they took out an innocent man. Derek Chauvin did. And the others just sat there and watched and protected Chauvin as he broke the law, as he violated a citizen's civil rights, constitutional rights. So let's continue here.
As I told George Floyd's family this morning, his death has had an irrevocable impact on the Minneapolis community, on our country, and on the world. His loss is still felt deeply by those who loved and knew him, and by many who did not. George Floyd should be alive today.
And that's the important part. I'm glad that he said that. George Floyd should be alive today. And I'm glad the U.S. Attorney General said that. I'm glad that he said that. I don't care how you feel about George Floyd. It doesn't matter about how you feel about the police. It doesn't matter about how you feel about, this side of the political spectrum or that side. It doesn't matter about how you feel. The ultimate truth is that I think we all go back to the non-aggression principle. The non-aggression principle is that citizens should not be harmed, especially when at the time of arrest, you are assumed innocent until proven guilty. Anytime someone passes away in police custody, that is an innocent person. That person cannot be tried. That person cannot be tried. You can't put them on trial if they're 6 feet under. So anytime that happens, by the letter of the law, that is an innocent person. George Floyd was an innocent person. I don't care about what he did previously. What happened to him happened to an innocent person. No matter how you try to slice it, dice it, or look around it. That is an innocent man. That was an innocent man who had a knee on the back of his neck. Period. There's no talking around that. That was proven in a court of law. Let's continue though.
Shortly after I was sworn in as Attorney General, I announced that the Justice Department had opened a separate civil investigation into whether the Minneapolis Police Department, the MPD, and the City of Minneapolis engage in a pattern or practice of unconstitutional or unlawful policing. I am here today to announce the findings of that investigation. I am also announcing that the Justice Department, the City of Minneapolis, and the MPD have agreed in principle to negotiate towards a consent decree. Since opening the investigation, the Justice Department has engaged in a comprehensive review of MPD's policies, training, supervision, and use of force investigations. Our review focused on MPD as a whole, not on the actions of any individual officer. We observed many MPD officers who did their difficult work with professionalism, courage, and respect. But the patterns and practices we observed made what happened to George Floyd possible. As one city leader told us, quote, "These systemic issues didn't just occur on May 25th, 2020. There were instances like that were being reported by the community long before that."
And now you get why there were mass demonstrations across the country. And now you get why there were so many demonstrations in Minneapolis in particular. Now you get why the Minneapolis Police Department and several of their buildings were being torched. Now you get it. You heard what Merrick Garland just said. He just said that these incidents of random attacks on citizens perpetrated by Minneapolis police officers, those were long-standing. Many of the citizens were reporting this over and over and over and over and over again. Do you think it was the white citizens there who were mostly complaining? Do you think that? All right. I'm not asking you to judge white America based on what it currently is, because there's a whole lot of white people right now who have awakened themselves to the whole concept of police brutality. I'm talking about judging white America based on, I don't know, let's not even go back that far. Let's say the 90s. Where was white America in the 90s when it came to Minneapolis Police Department, when there were black citizens complaining about them being targeted by Minneapolis police? Where was the white population then? Just curious. Where were they then? Because I want to remind you, when it comes to the Midwest, it wasn't really cool to say ACAB until Eminem came along. And Eminem, late 90s? It wasn't really cool until he came along, and even then, he was seen as the enemy of the cops. Most of white America, a good swath of it, didn't like him. The older and the middle class, the younger ones loved him. Black America embraced him. That's why in his songs he says, I use black music to get myself wealthy. Hey! He understands his fan base. He understands that hey, if it wasn't for us, he wouldn't be nothing. He gets that. He's open about it. I can respect that. The man's honest. But where was white America when we were complaining about Minneapolis police back in the 90s? How about the 80s? How about the 70s? Now you have the Attorney General of the United States coming forward and says, hey, there's a lot of complaints about police brutality and police corruption and police just being outright violent towards citizens. We find so much evidence. We're the Department of Justice. We looked into them and we found evidence. So imagine for a second, you're like me. You're a whistleblower and you've been talking about police corruption and police brutality for the longest time, and people have been gaslighting you, lying to you. Well, I know a good cop. Well, why are you complaining about the cops so much? Well, do you have anything else to talk about? Imagine all that gaslighting that was going on, that was happening to all the citizens who were talking about police corruption for this whole time. Imagine for a second all the gaslighting. See, this is why I tell people all the time, I don't want to hear your stupid opinion about police corruption. Shut up. Seriously. We are past the point of having these discussions. If you got to keep placing police departments across the country under federal consent decrees over and over and over again, it seems like every other year now, then it's time to stop defending them. We're past the point of defending them. Perhaps one of the biggest reasons why people dislike them so much is because people go out of their way to defend every action they take. Perhaps and just maybe, the reason why people have a problem with law enforcement is that people refuse to dislodge their loyalty to that badge. And do you want to understand the reason why that is? It's because white America always loved that badge because it always kept their slaves under control. Do you understand that white America can't even sense the reason why you love that badge so much? You can't even sense it. You can't even sense it. The same way that that black America has generational trauma, it's the same way white America has generational oppressor syndrome. This is why some habits are hard for certain people to break. This is why when you bring things up, and even when it's plainly obvious what's happening, they will still deny reality. It takes another white person, the attorney general, to come forward and says, those black folks are right. Yeah, listen, hate to break it to you. Them black folks, they had a point. They had a point. Let's go deeper, man. I don't want this to be just a simple me playing a video and that being the whole stream. No, I want to give you context that I don't even think he's going to give you. The context is black people have been complaining about Minneapolis police for the longest time, and white America has ignored us. That is a fact. You can't talk around it at this point when the attorney general has to come forward and says, them black folks are right. What they said about George Floyd, what they said about the Minneapolis Police Department, what they said about so many other institutions, they were right. And not only were they right, here's the proof. There's no talking then. There's no maybe, I know, shut up. No, stop. No. We are past the point of being gaslit. We are past the point of people constantly saying, well, maybe there's another way to look at it. There's no other way to look at it when the federal government comes forward and says, them black folks are right. There's no two ways to talk about it. What higher authority would we need? Jesus? Would Jesus Christ have to come down from heaven and grab you by your damn shoulders and say, them cops bad? Does Buddha have to come down and grab you and says, them cops bad? Hey man, them cops, they off. Would Thor have to come down from Asgard? What would it take? But see, the reason why there's such resistance to police, reform, abolishment, defunding, is because white people don't want to admit. The reason why you like them so much is because you see them as going after us. Stop lying. It's when you keep denying that, you're not making things better, you're making it worse. Because the purpose of the police in the beginning were slave catchers. And your resistance and your support of them, we have polls that show that it's mostly white Americans and non-black people in particular, but especially white America, who love the police. And your love of the police hasn't really wavered since they were the slave patrol. Make that make sense logically. Logically speaking, the police started off as a slave patrol. Most of white America supported them then. Most of white America still supports them now. We have something called a common denominator, right? You like them in both instances, and yet in both instances we have demonstrable proof that the police have targeted black people. So I want you to understand something, right? This is why whenever a white person, I don't care if you're my neighbor, I don't care if you're my friend, I don't care if you are my coworker. If you are a white person and you say that you like the police, I'm going to assume you're racist. I don't care how you vote. Do you understand the reasons why? The simple equation that I just gave you. if the police started off as a slave patrol, and most of white America liked them then, and they targeted black people because they were the slave patrol, and yet right now in the modern day, most of white America still likes them now, yet most of black people don't like them, or at least, or at the very least don't trust them. That tells me that's a common denominator. That means that through your support, right, of the police, through your support of the police, that is how you express your anti-blackness. I don't care who you are. Without exception. Without exception. You're not saying, I want to get rid of all black folks. No, what you're saying is that you have a certain type you don't like. And guess what? I want to inform all the white people who are going to say, well, that's all we're saying. We're just a certain type. You're not indigenous to this land, whitey. Who are you to lecture us or anyone about a type you don't like? None of your type should be here. None of your type should be here. We were here more than 100 years before any white people even showed their face on this continent. Now all of a sudden they want to put it in a freaking Smithsonian Museum because Christopher Columbus said it. We been knew that. The same way you got Mexican people who will deny their African roots, even though you know a lot of the salsa, a lot of the merengue drums, pinto beans, Mexican rice, gumbo, none of that stuff is Mexican. All that stuff comes from Africa. Everyone knows that. That's why you have Afro-Latinos all in Mexico, all in South America. That's why you know that. That's why you see that. The same way they denied their African roots, the same way the so-called native man here denies his African roots. Look at their shamans. Look at their teepees. Look at their reservations. Look at their customs. Look at their humanism, animism, shamanism. Look at every aspect of being a so-called Native American and look at black people. Look at African people and tell me there's no parallels. You tell me there's no parallels, you're out of your mind. The only thing you can really compare them to is either people from the Polynesian Islands and Africans. And guess what the birthplace of humanity is? I'll let you take a guess. All right. See, that's the whole thing, man. The biggest news that's been hitting the news waves these past couple years is just confirming what black folks have always told you. Black folks have always told you that you have been abusing the environment. You should stop because a lot of those African tribal leaders that you ran into and that you actually enslaved, they were telling you, you guys are abusing things right now. You got things all out of whack. You are over hunting things. They were telling you that then. And fast forward now, we got environmental disasters everywhere. Black folks told you, hey, listen. A lot of this commercialism that you guys are doing sounds great, but it's going to have an ill effect on your entire generation. And you had no problem with this so long as it was affecting our youth. But the moment it affected yours, see, that's why I don't completely dislike Eminem. I like what Eminem did. He brought some of that to your communities. I like it. See? You control hip hop. You recruit black rappers. You enslave them in bad contracts whereas they can't make money. The only way that they can make money is by selling gear and going on tour. They can't even make money off of their album sales because you own the masters. You own them pretty much, right? Then you use that same culture as a weapon against our children while also blaming us, even though we only 13% of the population. Hey, you said that, right? How can 13% of the population influence your children better than you, who is, what, 4, 5 times that? See, the biggest news that's been breaking out lately is just been black folks being proven right. Black folks being proven right. Right? That's all it is. It's just the news. That's the only news that you're hearing in the media these days. Black folks being proven right. Over and over and over again. And I gotta tell you, man, we are tired of being right. Let's continue. Sorry, I had to go on a little bit of a tangent there.
The Department of Justice has concluded that there is reasonable cause to believe that the Minneapolis Police Department and the City of Minneapolis engaged in a pattern or practice of conduct that violates the First and Fourth Amendments of the United States Constitution. There is also reasonable cause to believe that they engage in conduct that violates Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Safe Streets Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Did y'all hear that? So these police officers with the Minneapolis Police Department, they violated several. Basically, they targeted people who were black. They targeted people who were not black. They targeted people who had disabilities. They targeted people who were women. There's one case you are about to hear about a woman who called the police. She walked up towards a police officer. Someone says, "Hey, what's your YouTube page so I can subscribe to it?" ACAB Devil, ACAB Devil. So basically, she walked up towards a police officer, and the police officer fatally shot her. Just opened fire. And the reason why is because he said, and I'm quoting here, he said that she spooked me. She scared me. You shot a woman who called the police because she scared you. Is your automatic response to things that scare you to just open fire? Because I can tell you, I carry a gun every day. And my first response to things that scare me, they scare me all the time. Especially the police. But I don't just open fire. But you're gonna hear that. You're gonna hear that. Let's continue.
Specifically, we found that MPD and the City of Minneapolis engages in a pattern or practice of using excessive force, unlawfully discriminating against Black and Native American people in enforcement activities, violating the rights of people engaged in protected speech, and discriminating against people with behavioral disabilities and responding to them in crisis.
So basically, you not only have racist police officers, you not only have people who Minneapolis police targeted who have disabilities, people who were poor, people who were homeless, people who were disadvantaged. Minneapolis police officers would intentionally target it. There was one case where you had a Somalian American, who a police officer told him he liked the movie Black Hawk Down because of what they did to the Somalians. You're going to hear that in this video. You're going to hear that. That happened. A Minneapolis police officer said that to a Somalian. Yeah, seriously. That's where we're at right now with U.S. law enforcement, and people out there will not admit to what I'm saying. They won't do it. They can't do it because they have to hold on to a hero image of police officers. They have to hold on to it. It has to be maintained at all costs. Have you seen someone who follows a musical band or a certain anime or TV show or video game or a certain fandom? Have you ever seen how hardcore they are, even when you present something that might just be a slightly critical of their fandom? Have you seen how those people behave? Well, those things are not taxpayer funded or have hundreds of years of history linked to white supremacy. So understand something. That's what you're fighting against. You're fighting against someone's mindset that is so set on police officers being these heroes to the point whereas they will willingly ignore logic and reason. Even when presented with all the facts. They will ignore all that because they want to hold on to a hero fantasy. Do you understand how depraved that is? The level of depravity. I mean, that is a level of depravity. That is a level of almost a mental prison. You are forced to love something that you should have never loved. That's sad. That's sad. But let's continue.
I will discuss each finding in somewhat greater detail. First, we found that the Minneapolis Police Department routinely uses excessive force, often when no force is necessary, including unjust.
Did y'all hear that? He said that the Minneapolis Police Department utilizes excessive force even when no force is necessary. The U.S. Attorney General just said that the Minneapolis Police Department utilizes excessive force even when no force is necessary. Bruh. I'm going to play that for y'all again, man. I want y'all to hear that, man. That's wild.
And the city of Minneapolis engages in a pattern or practice of using excessive force, unlawfully discriminating against Black and Native American people in enforcement activities, violating the rights of people engaged in protected speech, and discriminating against people with behavioral disabilities and responding to them in crisis. I will discuss each finding in somewhat greater detail. First, we found that the Minneapolis Police Department routinely uses excessive force, often when no force is necessary.
Did y'all hear that? The Minneapolis Police Department, they're using excessive force even when no force, even when no force is necessary. So, do you understand what that means? That's like that is worse than instigating a fight, right? That's like walking into a grizzly bear's home, poisoning the cubs, right? Poisoning the cubs, and then when the grizzly bear goes to attack a human in retaliation, you then use that as an excuse to attack the grizzly bear. I mean, that's the equivalent. That's crazy. So they're using excessive force even when no force is necessary, right? Excessive force, meaning that in some cases, even when no force is necessary, right? They are shooting people. Once again, I'm gonna tell you about a case he's gonna actually bring up. There was a woman who called the police, and she walks up to a Minneapolis police officer. The police officer suddenly pulls out his gun and fatally shoots this woman on the spot. She's the one who called the police. She's the one who called the police. And he said, as his excuse, she spooked me. That's why I did it. I carry a firearm on me. Many Americans do. Many Americans, I guarantee you, the majority of Americans probably do. That's not our first response to someone scaring us. Our first response is to jump or get away. It's not to pull off and just mag dump. It's not just to pull out and to start shooting. That's crazy. That's nuts. But let's continue.
Including unjust, deadly force and unreasonable use of tasers. MPD officers discharge firearms at people without assessing whether the person presents any threat.
So I want you guys to not miss that one part. Do you understand how bad you got to be for the DOJ, the U.S. Department of Justice, to say you utilize excessive force by using your taser too much? We're not talking about shooting people. We ain't talking about less than lethal rounds. We ain't talking about running people over. We ain't talking about putting a knee on someone's on the back of someone's neck. We're talking about they're saying you use your taser too much. Or you use your taser when you're not supposed to. Do you understand how bad you gotta be as a police officer for the DOJ to say that about you? Do you get that? I want to bring this back because I don't want y'all to miss any part of this. I want you to take this in, man. Take this in. Take it in.
First, we found that the Minneapolis Police Department routinely uses excessive force, often when no force is necessary, including unjust, deadly force and unreasonable use of tasers. MPD officers discharge firearms at people without assessing whether the person presents any threat, let alone a threat that would justify deadly force. For example, in 2017, an MPD officer shot and killed an unarmed woman who he said had, quote, spooked him when she approached his squad car. The woman had called 911 to report a possible sexual assault in a nearby alley.
So this woman in Minneapolis, she reported a possible assault, a possible SA, whereas a woman was potentially becoming a victim. She called the police in Minneapolis, and so when the Minneapolis police actually showed up, she tried to go seek a police officer to go and tell them about it. When the woman approached the Minneapolis police officer, he opened fire. That woman is no longer with us. That happened in 2017, and the police officer's excuse was that the woman scared him. The woman spooked him. For anyone who's listening or watching this broadcast, let me ask you a question. If you carry a firearm, is your first response to someone spooking you or scaring you to pull out your firearm and just open fire? Is that your first response? Or do you think that is an extremely unreasonable response? I'm asking you, give me your honest opinion. Give me your honest opinion. If you are a man, a big strong man, I'm talking to the men right now. You know, boys, ladies, I love you ladies, but I'm talking to the men right now. Men, if you own a firearm and a woman walks up to you, is your first response to open fire? If that's your first response, you are not a man. So why in the world did a police officer open fire on this woman? I want to replay that part. I want people who support police officers to justify themselves. Let's hear that again.
I will discuss each finding in somewhat greater detail. First, we found that the Minneapolis Police Department routinely uses excessive force, often when no force is necessary, including unjust, deadly force and unreasonable use of tasers. MPD officers discharge firearms at people without assessing whether the person presents any threat, let alone a threat that would justify deadly force. For example, in 2017, an MPD officer shot and killed an unarmed woman who he said had, quote, spooked him when she approached his squad car. The woman had called 911 to report a possible sexual assault in a nearby alley.
Did y'all hear that? The woman called to report a crime, a very serious, heinous crime that police surely should be investigating. If they're going to be receiving taxpayer funds and military gear, surely if you're going to be getting all that, you should actually do something, right? So she approached the officer to report a crime, and the officer opened fire. She is no longer with us. That is the face of Blue Lives Matter. That is the face of U.S. law enforcement. That is the face of police officers. That is the face of the thin blue line. A woman no longer here with us because of the cowardly actions of a police officer. Wow.
We also found that MPD officers routinely disregard the safety of people in their custody. Our review found numerous incidents in which MPD officers responded to a person's statement that they could not breathe with the version of, "You can breathe. You're talking right now."
Do you understand the reason why that's insane, right? Saying something like, say a police officer has someone in a chokehold, right? And the person starts talking like, "Hey, I can't breathe." And the police officer says, "Oh, you can breathe. You're talking right now." That's a very stupid, moronic statement. If you've ever taken a combat lifesaver course, if you've ever been a medic, if you've ever worked in EMS, if you've ever been a doctor or nurse, LPN, RN, nurse tech, if you've ever worked in the medical field to any capacity, you know why that is a very stupid statement. You can be restricting someone's airways. And what little breath they're getting out to tell you to stop, that's what someone does when they're in desperation mode to save their life. Anyone who thinks, who doesn't think for a second, that's not how it is. You know nothing of human anatomy or how it works. Minneapolis police officers would routinely put a knee on the back of people's necks, particularly black Americans, especially native black Americans. They love to do that to us. Or put them in chokeholds. And when a person was shouting out, "I can't breathe," like that, they would say, "Oh, you can breathe. You're talking right now." If you receive even a morsel of medical training, if you have Google, if you have a smartphone and a search engine, you know why that's a dumb statement. Here, I know we're going to have people, right? I know. We're going to have people from the peanut gallery who's not going to get it. So let me just look it up for you. Can breathe. Breathe if you can talk. It's dumb. Okay. So I want to look this up, man. I want to look it up. If you can talk, you can breathe. The speaking imply breathing. This is from the Annals of Internal Medicine. What is this? ACP journals, okay? So, a dangerous myth. Does speaking imply breathing? On 25 May 2020, George Floyd pleaded at least 16 times, "I can't breathe." One officer in attendance nonetheless told bystanders, "He's talking, he's fine." Mayor Hall Marks of Peto, Mississippi posted on Twitter the following day, "If you can say you can't breathe, you're breathing." Similar arguments were put forth by New York Representative Peter King and police officials in the wake of Eric Garner's unaliving in 2014. The belief that a person's ability to speak precludes the possibility of suffocation is not true and can have fatal consequences. So I want to read that one more time. This is from the Annals of Internal Medicine, ACP journals, okay? I want to highlight this. So when a police officer is choking someone, and they say, hey, if you can talk, you can breathe, I want to demonstrate from the experts, the actual doctors, the medical professionals, why that's stupid. Quote, the belief that a person's ability to speak precludes the possibility of suffocation is not true and can have fatal consequences. Although the medical community may suspect that vocalization does not guarantee respiration, they might not be sufficiently familiar with the relevant physiology to allow them to speak with authority. Here we review basic respiratory physiology and highlight our role as clinicians and scientists in educating the public against relying on speech as a sign of adequate respiration, especially when this medical misconception is used to propagate injustice or violence. The medical professionals have said just because someone can talk, that does not mean they're getting enough breath. That does not mean they're getting adequate respiration. The medical professionals say that. So when you get a police officer saying, hey, I know I'm choking him, but if he can talk, he can breathe, that person is a moron. And anyone who defends them is also a moron. But I guarantee you, even when I present this, even when I show these facts, you'll still have that moron who'll say, I know a good cop. Shut up! Jesus! I mean, it's at the point where people like me are tired of saying the same stuff over and over and over again. I gotta become a freaking forensic psychologist, a freaking forensic specialist. I gotta become freaking CSI. I gotta become a freaking psychologist, sociologist. I gotta become a freaking shot spotter specialist, a fingerprint specialist to make a simple point about one story on a bad cop. If you could just concede one time when I say this cop's bad and shut the hell up, perhaps we wouldn't be so hard on cops. But you can't do that. Jesus. 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 You can't do it. It's impossible. It's impossible. It's impossible. You can't do it. You don't need to hear anything, you don't need to hear any more, right? But I'm going to play more for you. Get ready for this.
We also found that MPD officers failed to intervene to prevent unreasonable use of force by other officers. Indeed, as outlined in our report, years before he killed George Floyd, Derek Chauvin used excessive force on other occasions in which multiple MPD officers stood by and did not stop him. Second, we found that MPD unlawfully discriminates against Black and Native American people in its enforcement activities, including the use of force following stops. Based on our review of the data, MPD officers stop, search, and then use force against people who are Black and Native American at disproportionate rates. The data showed, for example, that MPD stopped Black and Native American people nearly 6 times more often than white people in situations that did not result in arrest or citation, given their shares of the population. We found several incidents in which MPD officers were not held accountable for racist conduct until there was a public outcry.
Did you hear that last part? Police officers weren't held accountable for their racist actions. This is according to the U.S. Attorney General. They weren't held accountable for their racist actions until there was public outcry. So the Attorney General just confirmed exactly what we've been saying. It wasn't because they saw the tapes. It's because you saw the tapes. Do you get that now? Do you get that now? It wasn't because they saw the tapes. It's because you saw the tapes. I want to get that back over here.
By other officers. Indeed, as outlined in our report, years before he killed George Floyd, Derek Chauvin used excessive force on other occasions in which multiple MPD officers stood by and did not stop him. Second, we found that MPD unlawfully discriminates against Black and Native American people in its enforcement activities, including the use of force following stops. Based on our review of the data, MPD officers stop, search, and then use force against people who are Black and Native American at disproportionate rates. The data showed, for example, that MPD stopped Black and Native American people nearly 6 times more often than white people in situations that did not result in arrest or citation.
So according to the U.S. Attorney General, who just said it right in front of you, right? This press conference is from June 16th, 2023. That's today. That's today. The U.S. Attorney General just said that Minneapolis Police Department, the same police department involved with George Floyd, same one. If you didn't get why there was the 2020 riots and protests and demonstrations, here, let me show you the reason why. This man just said that Black and Native Americans, but particularly Black people, were pulled over 6 times more than white people. And in those situations, those traffic violations almost never resulted in a criminal trial or citation. They were just being pulled over just to be pulled over, to be harassed. Oh. So that changes the whole narrative now, doesn't it? Now you can't just say, oh, it's just a few, it's just a few bad apples. No few bad apples is going to make it, whereas it's 6 times the rate as white people. That's not possible. That's not possible. That means that most of the force is doing this. That means that the command staff is encouraging it. That means that the police chief, the commissioner, whoever, that means that the lawyers involved with the police union itself, that means that all the officers, all the supervisors, they are all in on it. You do not have 6 times the amount of Black and Native American people targeted as white people in Minneapolis by the police, according to the DOJ, put out on June 16th, 2023, today, by the U.S. Attorney General. It is no way possible to have those numbers and that rate without there being at least most of the department at least aware of it, to never actually report it for all these years, or engaging in it. And it could be an and or. I would bet more on the and. And now you have the nerve and the audacity to ask Black people, why are you always so angry when it comes to the police? I swear to God, if I hear that again, I don't want to hear that anymore. I don't want to hear that anymore. Just anymore. Stop it. It's at the point where this is just, it's not just bad, it's I don't know what I don't even know what to even call this. But let's continue.
Given their shares of the population. We found several incidents in which MPD officers were not held accountable for racist conduct until there was a public outcry. For example, after MPD officers stopped a car carrying 4 Somali American teens, one officer told the teens, quote, "Do you remember what happened in Black Hawk Down when we killed a bunch of your folk? I'm proud of that. We didn't finish the job over there. If we had, you guys wouldn't be over here right now." As everyone no doubt knows, this is a reference to the 1990s raid by American Special Forces in Mogadishu.
Did y'all hear that? Do I need to play that again for you guys? A Minneapolis police officer pulled over a Somali American, and he told this Somali American, "Did you see the movie Black Hawk Down?" And he also would go on to say that he liked the movie because of what we did to the Somalis there, and that he didn't think that we finished the job, and that had we finished the job, that Somali wouldn't be over here. Wow. 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 That's next level, man. That's next level, man. Let's go back over that, man.
Native American people nearly 6 times more often than white people in situations that did not result in arrest or citation, given their shares of the population. We found several incidents in which MPD officers were not held accountable for racist conduct until there was a public outcry. For example, after MPD officers stopped a car carrying 4 Somali American teens, one officer told the teens, quote, "Do you remember what happened in Black Hawk Down when we killed a bunch of your folk? I'm proud of that. We didn't finish the job over there. If we had, you guys wouldn't be over here right now."
So basically, we have escalated things with police officers from simple police brutality to genocide. This guy is openly discussing that right now against a Somali American. This man, this Minneapolis police officer, pulled over 4 Somali American teens, and he told one of these Somalis, he said, "Hey, you ever see the movie Black Hawk Down? Yeah, I think we did a great job there, except we didn't finish the job." That's what this man thought to tell this young boy, teenager. I don't care who you are. I don't care what persuasion you come from, what lineage. I don't care what side of the I don't care what side of the political aisle you come from. I don't care what religion. I think we can all agree that's evil. That's evil. To tell to a child. That's a child. Like, I want you guys to understand. I don't care how you feel about things. That's a child. Why would you say that to a child? My God. Minneapolis police. Why would you say that to a child? Like, they didn't do anything. It's not their fault the world's messed up. They didn't choose this stuff. Why? What could a teenager have ever done to you to deserve that? That's dehumanizing, bro. Like you are depersoning this person, man. You're treating this. Yes, white supremacy is evil, but it is white supremacy. That is white supremacy too. And I want some of our African brothers and sisters who come over from the diaspora to hear this. When a lot of you come over here and says, oh, there's no white supremacy, you don't just work odd. Well, brother, let me tell you something now. It don't matter how odd you work. Okay? When a police officer says that to a child, don't matter. It doesn't matter how hard you work. When a police officer says that to a child, imagine your son comes home. Your son comes home and says, "Hey, a police officer pulls me and my friends over. It was 4 Somali teens. A police officer pulls me and my friends over, and he tells me, hey, I liked Black Hawk Down because the Americans were taking out these Somalis, and we should have finished the job. And if we finished the job, you wouldn't be here." You told that to a teenager. Imagine your son coming home and telling you that, and someone told him that. What would you do? How would you respond? I know how I would respond. But imagine being in the shoes of those parents. I don't care what you think a child has done. You don't do that, man. You don't do that, man. My God. That's why I say people who support police officers, y'all sick. I honestly, people who support police officers, I don't trust you around my child. I don't trust you around me. You're not a good person. And you know you're not. You're just justifying it. You're not. You're not. That is... Wow. That's where we are, though, folks. That's where we are, folks.
As everyone no doubt knows, this is a reference to the 1990s raid by American Special Forces in Mogadishu. Such conduct is deeply disturbing, and it erodes the community's trust in law enforcement. Third, we found that MPD violates the rights of people engaged in protected speech, including by retaliating against protesters as well as members of the press. For example, on May 30th, 2020, MPD officers encountered journalists who were sheltering at a gas station. One officer approached a journalist who was filming while holding up his press credential and shouting, "I'm press." The officer forcefully pushed the journalist's head to the pavement, and when the journalist held up his press credential again, an MPD sergeant pepper sprayed him in the face and walked away.
So Minneapolis police officers were attacking journalists, people who held up press credentials. Hey, I'm press. So then the officer started attacking the person and pepper sprayed him and then walked away. They're literally like attack dogs. The police are like zombies. Attack dogs. Rabid, vicious attack dogs. They weren't people. Wow. Wow. Attack pigs, yeah. Exactly.
Fourth, we found that MPD, along with the city, discriminates against people with behavioral health disabilities when responding to calls for assistance. Assistant Attorney General Clark will discuss these findings in further detail. To the credit of MPD and city leaders, some important changes have already been instituted. Those include prohibiting all types of neck restraints and banning no-knock search warrants. But as the report outlines, there is more work to be done. The Justice Department is recommending 28 remedial measures that provide a starting framework to improve public safety, build community trust, and comply with the Constitution and federal law.
So basically, the Minneapolis police are going to be placed under a federal consent decree because they don't follow federal law or the U.S. Constitution. Wow. Wow, yeah. This was the Church of ACAB. I have two different shows, but I have Black People Kind of News, but I also have the Church of ACAB. That is more open for anyone. I don't care what color you are. Black People Kind of News is something that I make for something that's more for the Black community. Anyone can watch, but I'm not going to lie. It is more Black-centric, more Black-focused. This type of broadcast is for anyone. Because I want everyone to see this. This is what you're paying for, America. You're paying for this. You're paying for, overweight, wife-beating terrorists who are usually predators who should be on Law and Order SVU. And I ain't talking about the hero police officers. I'm talking about as the suspects. They should be on Chris Hansen's couch immediately. They should go have a seat. Yeah, have a seat on the couch. Yeah. Most police officers are like that. I guarantee you. I bet you money. Bet you money. Bet money on it. I would bet my life on it. I would bet my life on it. You just heard a whole broadcast, whereas we just explained that not only Minneapolis police are violent, racist, and women, and Black people should definitely avoid them. But this is a reflection of America. It took this much for people to kind of get it. But the point is that every police department is like this, really. Every sheriff's department, every law enforcement agency, even the Department of Justice, even the FBI and CIA, they're all like this. If someone is law enforcement in the United States, you assume the following. They're a criminal. You shouldn't trust them around children or women alone because they're predators. They beat their wives. And they've likely taken someone's life and gotten away with it. You never assume that law enforcement are good people. Ever. Because so much of what we define as good and bad in this country is determined by these pigs. Don't believe it? All you gotta do is get shot by one of these pigs and they can determine whether or not you're a victim or not. Just ask Black Americans. Just ask the native Black Americans. Just ask foundational Black Americans. That's what you're paying for, America. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for my broadcast today. That's really what you got to hear. I want you guys to go hear the rest of that broadcast. So go over to Forest Breaking News and you can hear the whole live stream. I just want to go over brief parts of it. Guys, until next time, horns up, peace out, good night, and good luck.